A long time ago, on a comics page far, far away.
Welcome to Panel Up, your monthly pop culture panel. I'm John Campbell.
And I am Mike Gergoni.
Oh, Gergoni, we were off last month. Nothing happened, right?
No.
Nope.
No?
All right. Good. Moving on. Kind of appropriate that we're talking about villains this month, maybe.
Yeah. Look, we're talking about a couple of television bastards this month, as we're talking about.
Yeah, I think we have to call this now Panel and Television Bastards.
I mean, look, we're covering two shows from the Distinguished Competition and those guys across the street that are both about baddies, right? We're talking about Agatha All Along, and we're talking about The Penguin.
These are two shows that came out, roughly about the same time, and it just kind of happened to us that we realized we wanted to talk about each of them, and we realized that they were, running basically concurrent, and it feels like one of those, coincidental things that like both Marvel and DC put out shows focusing on more villain. I think one of these characters is certainly more villainous than the other one.
100%.
It's
Agatha, right?
But it's very interesting to see two separate streaming shows from these companies that are very different, but interestingly talking about some of the same themes that come with, what makes a villain, right?
And interestingly enough, both shows are recontextualized in their second to last episode.
Yeah.
Like, it's the parallels between these two I was very struck by them as I was watching the two shows.
Even though, just from a glance, obviously they're radically different in approach and tone and even what audience they're shooting for.
Totally.
But it's an interesting thing. I think it's also interesting to talk about these two, companies that are forever linked, whether they want to be or not. Ever in competition, whether that's fair or not. But I think this is also an interesting example of there are two different approaches, and they're at two very different places in their multimedia empires.
Yeah, for sure. And not to completely ignore the elephant in the room, but we're also going to be dancing around this idea of rooting for a bad guy when things in the U.S. political system might seem a little grim to certain folks. Not but here's the final point on it, but myself included.
Here's the interesting question about that. Does that make you more or less likely to root for a villain? Because you looked during the Great Depression, and that was the rise of the gangster film. And that's very, very much on the forefront of The Penguin. They talked about they wanted us to feel like a Cagney movie.
And with Agatha All Along, it's this idea about like self-imposed systems, right? Both of these shows are about rebelling against systems, whether those are systems that are ground into cultures with Agatha All Along and the whole idea of the witch's road and like what it is to be a witch and to have power, or in The Penguin when you have these systems of not only the Gotham City government and the police, but also the like structures and systems enforced on like gangster culture within Gotham, and how even the Penguin is sort of a rebel within that already rebellious structure.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting thing to talk about villains in a time of turmoil and stuff like that, because sometimes there's a reason why people crave people who don't play by the rules when they feel the rules are unfair.
Yeah. And so, look, we're going to try to keep this like, I don't want to say apolitical because there's no such thing as apolitics in art, right?
Yeah, but we'll keep it. We're not. These weren't designed to be direct, one-to-one. So we won't ignore it, but we won't be drawing needless comparisons. Let's say.
And we're trying to talk about these shows and what we enjoyed about them, what we didn't enjoy about them, and we are not a political podcast necessarily.
No.
Though we've never made any, like, hiding of our own, like, fairly leftist politics.
Yeah, but we're not, we're not trained political people or anything like that. There are people much smarter than us. You can see talking about that on a more, a front street level than us. It just creeps into a discussion of stuff because, like you talk about, I am one of those, people who, and I don't know, I'm interested in people who aren't, but like all art is political. As soon as you tell a story, there's a political bent to it because you're a human being and existing in the world. So that's in there. Yeah. And especially these are shows about, you can't talk about Agatha without obviously there being at least, immediately a feminist agenda of some sort to it, or a bent to it. Maybe not an agenda, but a bent to it, right? I mean, it's inherently a show about women. Which stories in general tend to be feminist from design?
Absolutely. Look, you talk about a show that's going to be passing the Bechdel test, it's going to be Agatha all along, right?
Sure. And I think the Penguin might actually as well, although I don't really know if shows count.
Anyway, that even like the Bechdel test is an arbitrary marker of tracking like feminist media and trying to figure out whether or not they're writing women progressively. For those who don't know, it's this idea of two women having a conversation that does not involve discussing a man, but simply having a discussion about
two named female characters. And it's one of those things that can irk me sometimes because it's meant to be examined in broad detail, not on an individual level, right? Because why does this pass but this doesn't? Somebody brought up the movie Gravity doesn't pass, but you're like, but that's a movie because there's only like 3 people in the movie, and that's not really the point of it. That doesn't like undo it. It's more about, it's like any of this stuff. It's about trends. If you're like, there seems to be no movie that passes this, seems odd, then, and of course, I mean, there's also a heavy amount of feminism in the Penguin. We should say both of these shows actually are from female showrunners.
Oh, I did not know that about the Penguin. The Penguin, I have a little less information on because, well, honestly, it's the show I was a little less interested in. But all the marketing definitely like puts Matt Reeves at the front and center.
It's the Matt Reeves vision. It's his take on Gotham, but the actual day-to-day show running and a lot of the broad strokes of the story of the show itself comes from Lauren LaFranc as the showrunner of the Penguin. Okay. With sort of, once again, the, in the George Lucas-y sort of, master plan of Matt Reeves.
Oh, she was a series producer on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for quite some time. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. She's been around. I mean, it's something I was talking to somebody about this. Like, you don't just get handed... You don't just see somebody become showrunner. You've got to come up through something. Yeah. And so she definitely is got. And I think, I mean, my God, I can't wait to see what she does next after having seen The Penguin. But I do think she also wrote for Chuck, and which we were fans of back in the day.
Yeah, totally. And she has writing credits on. Or just developer creator credit as writing on every episode of The Penguin. Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to go back in and look because of the way IMDb and TV writing credits are not great, I will say, because oftentimes they're that. It's like if you're the creator, you're on every episode. It's like, okay, well, yeah.
Well, and as the creator of a show, like especially if you're more involved, there is that whole like sitting in the writer's room and helping guide ideas. Like it is truly a cooperative effort.
Credited writer on 2 of the scripts, which I think are the first and last one.
Okay.
That she actually has script credit for. But we also know how TV works, that no one person is writing an episode of anything.
Right, and the same could be said for her name is Jack
Schaefer.
Yeah, Jack Schaefer over on Agatha All Along.
Yeah, these. I mean, as showrunner, you're in charge of the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you're credited with writing each episode doesn't really matter.
Looks like she's got writing credits on 2 specific episodes of Agatha All Along, and directed 3 of the.
Yeah, she also directs. Yeah. So no, I mean, once again, really, I think both of these. The other thing that's really interesting is both of these are The kinds of things I point to when I push back on people talking about like, superhero stuff's all the same. Both of these are very unique, singular works within larger, quote unquote superhero IP.
Totally. And they feel distinct and fresh, and it's really hard and annoying. I shouldn't say hard. That makes it seem like it's some kind of burden, but it can get very frustrating. I carry it with
me every day, Gergoni. Every day, it's like a weight on my back.
Well, when I say what it is, you might agree, and that is that this like overbearing mentality that you see a lot online of just like, everything's crap, everything's the worst, nothing has been the same since Endgame in the case of Marvel, or nothing will ever be as good as the Snyder cut of Justice League. I know that's a very, very small minority of people who say that, but
I do really like that movie, but yeah, the idea that that's the be-all, end-all is insane.
But this idea that like nothing fresh or inventive is being done, and that nothing of quality is being produced anymore, and it feels very like back in my day, kind of ignoring aspects of things that have been done since this like emotional high that we all experienced at Endgame, or like what you remembering when you saw Batman for the first time.
Well, it's an interesting thing that was always going to happen, right? Because it always does. There's always the demarcations in any fandom of anything, right? About like, things were better. We talk about Star Wars most of the time on this show. It's really interesting to see that when the prequels came out, you had the whole generation that was like, our movies were better in the 70s, and then the sequels come out, and you had the whole generation go, no, the prequels were better, man. It's just the second there's any sort of deviation between generations of a thing, there's gonna be the original series people who didn't like Next Generation, the 90s Star Trek people who don't like what Paramount Plus is doing. I mean, Saturday Night Live is always the ultimate example of, it was best when I was in high school. That being said, I will go to bat that it was best when we were in high school. I think definitively I have receipts on that. But yeah.
Look, I will say my Sean Connery impression was honed on the blade that was late 90s Daryl Hannah.
Yeah. But I mean, late night hosts, we grew up as Conan kids, but but before that we're Letterman kids. I mean, anything in pop culture, the second you start doing that. So I do think that it is frustrating, but I guess part of me is like, I guess this was always going to happen, right? Once they put an ending of anything that marks here's the end of something, the second they started doing anything else, there was going to be some section of people that are going to be like, not as good.
There's always going to be people who wish Tom Bombadil were there.
Yes. Yeah. I don't care for the Jackson films. That to me is always one of the ultimate, like the nerdiest possible things. You're like, here's a thing that like very much most people can agree is great, but it's just like I see the imperfections,
the fact that we do not recognize Thranduil is just beyond redemption.
That's a whole other thing. There's also that subsection of people who are going to hyperfixate on tiny little things and have a problem.
You host a podcast with one of them.
Yeah, one of these two shows I had more arguments about than the other.
Let me guess. The fact that Oswald Cobblepot doesn't have an umbrella or is named Oswald Cobblepot someone the wrong way.
You could have just stopped at Oswald Cobblepot. But I think Agatha in particular, and this is actually a good segue into actually talking about the show, is indicative of something I've really, whether or not you've enjoyed everything, post-Endgame, I think Marvel's gotten pretty experimental. Much more so than they had been. So I do think that's a thing of like, okay, it's not the same, but I think they've taken more creative swings than ever in this last phase of films and television.
Much bigger swings.
Yeah. And maybe some of those haven't connected with everybody, but that's okay. The thing I do really like about Feige and and co over there, because much like with Matt Reeves, that the Batman, it's not just one person, obviously, but like, through the masthead of Feige, they do learn from stuff. They really do pay attention to this work that didn't work, but they also don't drop stuff. They go, okay, that didn't work. How do we, move that into this and find a way to make it work over here? I think we talked. I mean, and that was the case in the first saga as well, right? Of look at how much Thor. We always talked about this. How much Thor: The Dark World ends up playing into Endgame, and you're like, wait, that was one people didn't like. It's like, yeah, but we just found a way to make it important, and you're like, oh shit. I mean, look at the way they continued, and even more so, continue to make the Incredible Hulk super important.
Totally, and. Yeah, we're recording this obviously after some D23 Brazil stuff, so we've seen new trailers for Falcon and the Winter, or not Falcon and the Winter Soldier, sorry, Thunderbolts, as well as Captain America: Brave New World. And,
man, that's some Red Hulky goodness.
That's some big Red Hulk energy, and I'm here for it.
I don't know if you saw from D23. They released what the popcorn bucket's going to be for.
Oh, no.
Captain. I mean, they've got me with it because it's the Red Hulk tearing the shield in half.
And you reach through the shield to get the popcorn?
I don't know where you reach into anything. I just want the fucking. I don't even need to fill it with popcorn. I just want the figure. It's fair. Rad because it's rad. But I was like, oh god, one of those, please.
Yeah, and you talk about how experimental Marvel has been since Endgame, but I think DC is honestly even more all over the map because they just are just trying to get something that works.
Here's the thing, and you know what I like is, and now under James Gunn, and Penguin is not. I think Penguin was already going when Gunn took over. Like they were already at least. So this is still not. Here's the thing with all the James Gunn talk about whether or not Gunn's good for DC. As many people point out, we've actually seen nothing that's been initiated under his regime yet.
Unless you kind of want to count Peacemaker, because that gives you a flavor of what he's...
Yeah, I mean, Suicide Squad and Peacemaker were things he made as a creator there. But in terms of, like, under his stewardship of the new DCU, we technically won't see anything until Creature Commandos next month.
Right. And then Superman is the next thing after that.
Yes. Creature Commandos, then Superman. And as we already know, the Batman universe in general is not the Batman crime saga,
which is the Matt Reeves stuff.
That's the Matt Reeves Batman world that the Penguin takes place in, is a separate entity from the DCU. But one of the things I do like about Gunn's mentality, or what he's talked about, is that they're sort of embracing the fact that they're not Marvel and that that it isn't all connected. It's all going to be in the same world, but the idea that they're not building anything specifically, that's not the goal. At least at the start, right?
Yeah. Well,
is make movies that feel different, but they're all in the same world, but they're all are unique filmmaker driven projects.
And I think that is a much more intelligent way of going about it than we need to get a cinematic universe off the ground right now, which is what they tried with Justice League, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is I like that Justice League, well, the Snyder cut of it I like, and I liked a lot of those individual movies, but it did feel like they were trying to force this to go faster, right? It was just like, and so it's like a lot of the worst stuff in the DCEU, as it was called then, was the stuff that was trying to build, so they would take interesting ideas and then they would get hamstrung by like, yeah, but we got to set up this thing and that thing. And if we don't name drop Darkseid, then and it's like, whoa.
Whereas if you just, and this seems to be the approach Gunn is taking, take this gestalt idea of the DC characters and universe and make movies assuming all of that already exists is kind of a fun, novel take. Like, seeing Mr. Terrific on the set of the new Superman movie is just like, oh, we're probably not going to get the origin story of Mr. Terrific, but the fact that he's kicking around and going to interact with Superman, that rules.
That's the idea, right? Is that it's just, this is Superman who lives in the DC universe, and yes, can run into Mr. Terrific or Green Lantern. But it doesn't have to be the main plot of the movie. It doesn't have to be setting up the Justice League movie down the road. I mean, I'm really excited about the idea of the Lantern show they're doing, where it's, a 60-something Hal Jordan. And I know a co-host of mine might be really upset about that, but now try. And so yeah, the idea, his big thing, Gunn's also, that's another big thing Gunn is trying to do, is history. This is a world that has already existed, and there have already been superheroes. And so we're coming into it, and you could do stuff that doesn't have to go in a linear. If we decide, oh, we really like this, well, let's go see what the Justice Society was doing in World War II, and we can make a movie that was that.
And I think that's very cool. And it's something that Marvel has sort of done retroactively, and Agatha's playing in quite a bit in terms of, like, maybe not secret history, but a history that, like, none of the movies necessarily goes out of their way to acknowledge, simply because that's just the history of the world, and those characters wouldn't necessarily need to say, like, oh, by the way, there were witches in the United States since the early 1600s, and the covens of Salem were very integral. And
the one that really got me with that for the first time with them, I mean, obviously Captain America, but that was still early, right? That it was like, oh yeah, by the way, then World War. But like Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man, where they were just like, oh yeah, no, Hank Pym went on a bunch of like Cold War era 1960s adventures. Like, oh, so there, like Tony Stark opened us up to the world, but there have been people doing crazy science and superhero stuff forever. Or I mean. Oh my God, the last Agatha with the montage through time.
Well, let's just post a spoiler warning right now, I think, before we get too much deeper into this. Because I think there are actually legitimately some big, heavy spoilers that can be talked about in Agatha All Along and The Penguin. And I would hate to ruin either of those turns for I think people who might watch the show.
If you want to take one thing into this, watch both of these shows. Both of these shows are well worth your time. My God.
Very different vibe. I would say Agatha All Along is maybe the more fun of the two shows. Well, in terms of vibe.
Yeah.
John, most people don't find cold-blooded crime thrillers to be as, quote-unquote, fun as you do.
Tell that to HBO. Highest rated thing they've had in a long time.
Well, all right. Let's call Agatha All Along a little bit more whimsical, and I know you are a true nemesis of whimsy.
We're on shaky ground. Whimsy. I liked Agatha though. And Agatha is not is really dark in places though too.
Absolutely. So that being said, spoilers abound from here on out.
Indeed. I mean, because one of the things actually on that point that I was really struck by was how much Agatha leaned into the horror of DC or of Marvel, because that's certainly something we've been, edging ever closer to, right? With things like Multiverse of Madness, that the magical side of Marvel is pretty dark.
I think Multiverse of Madness, you talk about like big swings. Multiverse of Madness, and I even think WandaVision, had moments of this. Since Endgame...
This is the same showrunner as WandaVision for
totally.
People who,
and this show is a direct sequel to WandaVision in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it is kind of great that Multiverse of Madness and Sam Raimi kind of kicked the doors open for a more, weird... somewhat like Grimm's fairy tales kind of horror vibe that Marvel has tapped into with Agatha All Along and Werewolf by Night and Multiverse of Madness. Those are some of my favorite stuff that's been done so far.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, I'm a massive Multiverse of Madness fan. We are on video, so I can show this. It literally sits above my computer.
Nice. Corpse Strange.
Zombie Strange. I look at that every day when I work here. That movie's huge for me, and it does feel like while this is a piece of a piece with WandaVision being a sequel, Multiverse of Madness has definitely happened, and some of that Raimi kookiness has rubbed off on this.
Mm-hmm. And there
are way wilder than WandaVision in certain ways.
Oh, I mean, the biggest one being just the central conceit of every episode, traveling through a mystical dimension where you are promised untold witchcraft powers at the end of it.
Well, and that each one of them, in keeping with the WandaVision, each one of them is sort of an aesthetic of fantasy or horror that you're vaguely familiar with.
Yeah, we've got like kind of the Stepford Housewives kind of vibe of the first trial. We go into like the trippy kind of like 70s grindhouse stuff in the second trial. We get into kind of the more modern like haunted cabin sleepover aesthetic of like the late
80s slasher, 80s slasher sleepaway camp kind of movie. And so all of that stuff is super fun. And the thing that I think in both shows, that Jack Schaefer in particular, and I give her credit obviously as the sort of central creative voice of these, keeping those things from not just feeling gimmicky, right? Keeping those things ever tied into the characters, ever tied into the story that they're telling. It never feels like, yeah, this is the one where they do this, you know.
Mm-hmm. But also at the same time, both Agatha and WandaVision are pretty unique among the Disney Plus TV shows in that they feel more episodic than any of the other ones that can feel a little bit more like movies that have been chopped up. I'm thinking of Falcon and the Winter Soldier specifically.
Yeah.
I think the other Marvel had kind of an episode by episode basis.
She-Hulk definitely did.
She-Hulk definitely did, but She-Hulk is also my favorite of the bunch for lots of reasons.
That's an unconventional opinion, but I'll go with it.
Look, I'm a sucker for Hulks of all ranges and sizes, and She-Hulk is one of my favorite Marvel characters. So,
I do love She-Hulk, and I did enjoy that show. But I mean, it's an interesting thing, right? I mean, we talk about the Marvel experimentation. A lot of that has been what even is a Marvel TV show, right? Mm-hmm. Because and from what I gather, the movement has sort of been towards doing more episodic approaches in coming shows.
I think it makes it a little bit more accessible, at least for like just casual TV watchers, right?
Well, I mean,
throw on an episode. You don't necessarily have to binge the whole show every time you sit down to watch it.
It's an interesting thing, right? Because it's actually a debate that's just going on in television production as well. I mean, we haven't. I don't know, but then they've also experimented with doing things like Echo, where they, which is very serialized, but they also released it all at once.
Yeah. Whereas both Agatha and the Penguin were released weekly.
Right. I imagine Daredevil will probably be a combination of the two, if anything.
And Agatha actually kind of had its cake and ate it too, because the first 2 episodes were released at the same time, and the last 2 episodes were released at the same time.
Yeah, like I said, they're definitely experimenting with not just what they're making, but how they're releasing it. And, I mean, like I said, I like that they take chances on stuff. I mean, Disney in general is still somewhat new to this television producing business in this format, at least in the modern streaming era. I think they're putting out the first 2 Skeleton Crew episodes at once as well.
Yeah. Because that gives people like a big bite to sit down and watch right out the gate.
They put out the first 2 Acolytes, didn't they? I'm pretty sure.
I believe you're correct.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's what I. But so I mean, and that's an approach. And then I've seen other stuff do like the first 4 or half the season or something. There's any number. We're having this huge conversation.
Arcane on Netflix right now is releasing like a third of the season at a time.
Yeah, that's been it. Netflix has been doing a lot of like half of a season, then 3 months, then another half of a season. There's been any number of approaches to try to, because
extend the conversation, right? Because that's what they're trying to do.
Well, but it's an interesting thing, right? Because you're serving one audience that wants to, but then there's another audience that wants to just watch it all in a weekend, and so they're trying to kind of find ways to do both. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting thing. Whereas Penguin, on the other hand, is an interesting example of a show that was designed as a streaming show that then HBO is like, actually, can we just release this on our network every Sunday night like a normal one of our shows because we're dying as a network? I mean, honestly, that a lot of and then they're doing it with Lanterns as well. Lanterns was supposed to be a Max show that is now going to be an HBO proper show because they're kind of starved for content over there.
The fact that those are even 2 different things is so stupid to me.
Well, I mean, they are and they aren't, right?
But it's just, I don't know. The fact that they even divested the HBO logo from Max to begin with already struck me as like a weird move. And then to like further divorce them by saying like, oh, this will premiere on HBO, with most people not even recognizing the difference at this point, because how are most people consuming an HBO product? It's through Max.
Right, and so it's a thing where the idea that it premieres an hour earlier than it does on the service doesn't really matter.
Who do you know that's watching HBO proper on cable?
I mean, no one under the age of 50.
Yeah, again,
I know a couple people, but pretty rare.
parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But yeah, for the most part, that's it. Yeah, no, that's it exactly. It's just I would still watch it every Sunday when Penguin would come on, but it would just be on Max, and
Sure.
I had no. It mattered not at all to me that it was Sunday at 10 on HBO is the Penguin.
Right. And look, Agatha had a time of day at which it dropped on Thursdays, and I would know that after 6 p.m. I could sit down and watch Agatha, and I would, usually on the day of, but was that because I knew it was the premiere date, or mostly because I just wanted to avoid spoilers on the internet?
I mean, yeah, I don't, it's a whole approach to this thing, but just in general, but, hey, it worked, because like I said, their HBO saw numbers, tune in live numbers that they haven't seen in years for Penguin. And it grew. It like doubled its audience by the end of the finale.
Is that because you had people that were starved for The Sopranos? I wonder.
Well, I mean, I think they're starved for, it's The Sopranos. I mean, but like starved for, HBO used to mean a certain kind of content, and I feel like they haven't been delivering on that as much as they once did.
House of the Dragon, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of their big stuff ended, right? Game of Thrones ended. Succession just ended. That was kind of their last, like, super buzzy one. Curb Your Enthusiasm just ended. Their longest running show, So, I mean, I think they're like a lot of places in a weird flux state of HBO used to be the king. I mean, you remember, it was like, that was when they had Sopranos and Deadwood and stuff like that. It was like, oh, they're a cut above everything else. Nobody can touch the quality of HBO.
Well, and it was like TNT and AMC that was trying to play catch up with things like Mad Men and The Walking Dead, right?
Right, yeah. Or FX with The Shield or things like that. Right, that were
but
like...
they were always like, oh, that's HBO level stuff, but slightly, I don't know, mass marketed because they couldn't do anything.
Well, because they still had to answer to advertisers.
Right.
Those were still, commercial-based television.
Yeah.
But now everything is at HBO's level. Mm-hmm. And Netflix has really taken a lot of that. And actually, the big thing I've been saying a lot recently is I really think Apple has stolen HBO's crown in a lot of ways. I think a lot of the highest quality stuff is on Apple these days.
I mean, they did give me a Godzilla show, so I can't argue with that.
I'm just saying, but indicative of that, HBO also used to be the place, not necessarily Godzilla specifically, but like, oh, they made TV that was like movies, and now
spectacle,
yeah, a lot of it is like that. So it's an interesting. But what's interesting is that the Penguin has been so popular for them, and while it's certainly very polished and cinematic, it is not massive in scope. It's actually fairly intimate, crime drama.
It all takes place in apartments and in like gangster hideouts, and like occasionally we have scenes happening on the street, but we don't have the kind of like running and gunning you would expect from like an action series per se. It's a lot of discussions with guns held at people.
Yeah, I mean it's the kind of stuff I live for, which is, high gloss crime drama. It's in the vein of I mean everybody's initial reaction of the show was like, oh, it's Sopranos Batman, and there's some aspects of that, but yes, it's a lot of gangster stuff rolled up into there. I said the old Cagney movies, because of course even Sopranos didn't invent the mob show, obviously, by any stretch of the imagination. So, but I do think it's something that I did see a lot of the reviews start to be more like, I think we may have written this off a little too soon as, oh yeah, Sopranos clone. As it went along, it's like, I think this is actually doing something unique, even if the trappings of it are very familiar. This is telling a story that's really prescient and impactful.
Well, like I say, something I was struck by both of these shows, and I think The Penguin more so as it went on for sure, was this idea of systems and these themes of being trapped by expectation, right? Both of these shows are centered around bad guys that are sort of wrapped up in their own mythos, even to the point in certain sections of both of their stories where they can't even admit to the truth of themselves in order to, like, that might even put cracks in that myth.
Yeah.
And I found that so interesting.
That moment in Penguin where Sophia is trying to make Oz confess to the murder of his brothers, and he just won't.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think in he's maybe deluded himself enough to be like, nah.
The moment in Agatha where she's standing over the grave of her son and then has to turn the con back on to, like, try to start tricking these witches into using the song she developed as, like, this thing with her son to share their love for each other, but she uses that as, like, a serial killer method, was just like, holy shit.
That reveal in Agatha was such a rug pull that I wasn't expecting the show to pull that kind, to, like, head that direction, or I wasn't going like, all right, where's the big twist? But to retroactively make the entire season mean something different in its last episode.
It did that 3 times in the last 3 episodes, and it was such a just, like, combination punch of recontextualizations continually that made me go, like, literally hold my head as, like, the second to last episode was ending, and we get the realization that Billy has sort of created all of this, and me going, holy shit, this show isn't what I thought it was the whole time.
I mean, which, WandaVision did as well, but WandaVision almost up front told you, like, something's off.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I took more on face value to a certain extent. I also love that everybody was so certain about Billy, right? And it was just like, and that even the show is just like, oh yeah. Like halfway through, they're just like, yeah, no, he's exactly who you think he is. That's not what we were building towards.
Yeah, like, look, the show isn't called Son of the Scarlet Witch. It's called Agatha All Along, because it's going to have been Agatha all along.
Yeah. It's it justifies that title. It was Billy all along until it's Agatha all along, right? Like, it's well, I mean, apparently now they're developing Son of the Scarlet Witch show, which makes a lot of sense coming out of this.
Totally.
I was curious how it's going to play, how the events of this will play into the Vision show they're making.
Absolutely. It feels like Scarlet Witch's extended family is going to be the bread and butter of Marvel for a few years here.
Well, and there's a big, it's a rumor, but there's some pretty good evidence that Jack Schaefer is going to make a Scarlet Witch movie next.
Cool.
Which would make a lot of sense. Once again, it seems like that's sort of kind of like how Gunn became their, like, cosmic guy. It sort of feels like she's gonna shepherd a lot of the magic stuff, especially if there's rumblings about a Midnight Suns movie, which would also make a lot of sense in that world. And maybe that's how they bring in Blade. Is kind of what I'm hearing now. Is the Blade movie maybe is being shoved off in favor of introducing him in a team setup and then breaking him out. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, and getting back to the Penguin, we have that, like, whole second to last episode where we get, like, actually what happened to Oswald's brothers.
Shit, he killed him. Shit, he killed him, Dragoni.
Yeah, the city killed him.
Shit, he killed him. Shit, he killed my brothers.
But the fact that, like, does that even recontextualize that line when we realize just how much of a sociopath Oz is, in that he sees himself as this, like, avatar of the city.
Yeah. I mean, because I think Oz is a guy who can clearly the point is he can justify any decision, right?
Yeah.
And so I think he does. I think he's being sincere from his perspective. City killed my brothers. Now, whether or not that meant the circumstances and socioeconomic situation mixed with my own fucked up chemistry made me retroactively acting as the city killed them, you know.
Yeah.
I also think there's a certain removal because, of course, the way he killed his brothers was, well, I just left them somewhere and then they died. So city killed them.
Right. Well, and it's this continual treadmill of him recontextualizing himself to be the good guy, or not the good guy, but the hero of his own story, right? And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about good villain stories, is villains that recognize themselves as their own protagonist.
That's exactly. I don't think he would say I'm a good guy, but I think he lives in a world where like everybody's bad. So if we're all starting this table, then I should be in charge because I'm not the Falcons. I'm not the Maronis. You know, right? And so it's a thing where it's just like, because I mean, this whole thing too. I mean, basically the way he takes over the underworld is he gets everybody to back him eventually, right? It's sort of the thing where it's just like, because I'm the guy from the streets. I'm not some rich person with a silver spoon in his mouth. I know what it is to come up through Gotham and the worst parts of Gotham.
Well, and he's also playing on everyone's need for validation in a way that makes it so, like, all of these people recognizing these systems of power that will never recognize them and using that as leverage to get them all to rebel. Yeah.
We're the thrown away people. We're the little people. I mean, this whole thing about we got to take Gotham back.
Right. But back from what and for who is never asked.
Well, no, and that's it exactly, because, of course, the answer is for Oz Cop, right?
Right.
I mean, you see that the first scene of the Penguin is so good with Alberto Falcone, and just that he's treated like such shit, and he just treats Oswald like garbage until Oswald just murders him. Because eventually there's a limit to this guy, right? Like, you know, he's not going to take that shit eventually. And also, I think there's a thing about maybe he did take that shit from Carmine Falcone. But you're not Carmine Falcone. Like, there's a sort of thing where it's just like, hey, man, I don't view you above me.
Yeah, exactly.
I had certain respect for your father as an elder, but you're, like, objectively probably younger than him, it seems like. I don't actually know how old Oz is supposed to be.
I read him as, like, early 40s.
Yeah, I think he
like
looks
a hard early 40s, but
yeah, he's got city miles on him. Oh, there's no question. No, I think I think he's younger than he looks is exactly it, because I mean, you can kind of, it doesn't really matter. You can kind of piece together. By the way, I mean, we'll talk about Farrell, of course, but the kid who played young Oz is so good.
Oh, so creepy.
Oh, good.
But like creepy in a way that like you can see this kid growing up into Colin Farrell under a bunch of makeup.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, just go ahead and
Ryder Allen is that kid's name.
Allen, he's great. I didn't see Palmer, which is a movie he's in with Justin Timberlake, but that I think he's like the co-lead in that with him. I didn't catch that, but
that was like 3 years ago. So who knows how this kid has changed since then? He's so young.
Man, though. But I was just gonna say, just go ahead and etch in that makeup artist Emmy, right?
I mean, the fact. I mean, we talked about this in our discussion about The Batman years ago.
This is the thing I was talking to somebody about this. I'm like, of course it was amazing in The Batman, but just having 8 hours with it and much more, because I think he's in about 20 minutes of The Batman total.
Yeah.
But just getting to how much time, the close-ups. I mean, the thing that's amazing about it is how much it is still very much Colin Farrell's face. He is not restricted at all as an actor, but they've completely changed his face at the same time. And then, of course, in this, the body work on it too. It's not just a fat suit.
He is this like, I mean, they've given him this like penguin shape, right? This like waddling, thick body, but when he's throwing people around, you believe it.
Well, that's the thing I think is not only you have this incredible makeup job, but it does speak to a guy who I'm on the record as thinking is one of our greatest living actors. I mean, I'm a massive, massive Colin Farrell fan. But that's the thing about it is he doesn't feel like a thin guy that's put on padding. He plays the weight of the character in every moment, the physicality of it, the genius of the waddle of the penguin, but it feels real. And oh my god, when you see his gross foot, and you're just like, and you're just like, this guy is just, and yeah, even the subtle things about the way his face is shaped, like it comes to a beak, but without it being like a Burgess Meredith or Danny DeVito monstrous prosthetic. It's all just so brilliantly done. And I know he was out. Farrell was out doing press junkets with the makeup artist on this. The two of them together talking about how it's like the two of us built Oz. And you can really feel that collaboration.
It's a combination of the prosthetics, right? But as the person is layering on makeup, you have to be sure that you're not losing any of the performance. So there's got to be this collaborative back and forth between like this guy figuring out what his face can do while the makeup artist is figuring out what the makeup is capable of on this face. And that's just like a wild bit of collaboration you don't really think about until you see this performance dragged out over 9 episodes. I shouldn't say dragged out, but like expanded upon over these episodes.
Well, that's just the thing about it, and that's why I'm so blown away by it. It's like, well, it's the same makeup from the Batman. I'm like, yeah, but it's given such, this is his show, so you spend so much time with him, and the idea that under that kind of scrutiny, you're still like, I don't see the seams, and I both do and don't see Colin Farrell.
When I was watching this in the living room, and my partner comes home, and it's like, who is that? I'm like, oh, that's Colin Farrell. And she's like, no.
I mean, that was so much of the reaction if people who saw the Batman without knowing are like, who played the Penguin? That guy, Colin Farrell. It's an incredibly famous and also famously handsome leading man.
Like almost too handsome for his own good in a lot of his career, it feels like.
Like a lot of guys I love, he has had the burden of being so handsome. And I think early on in his career, they were like, oh, you're like Pretty Boy. It's like, no. This guy wants to be weird. And that's why it does not surprise me at all that multiple times I've heard him say, oh, this is my favorite performance this is the most I've enjoyed doing anything. I'm so free as the Penguin. Mm-hmm. And you can just feel it.
But at the same time, it must have been torture to put this makeup on every single day.
Well, and and especially once again when you added in some of the episodes where he's unclothed, and you get the bodysuit on top of that. Mm-hmm. There's one thing you can put him in padding that doesn't have to be, but like that's now more prosthetics on him, and he's just, I mean, the weight that would carry, I can't imagine that.
Or maybe he just ate a lot of pie. Who knows?
I think he talked about, he goes, I didn't put on the weight, but it was nice not to have to worry about the weight.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not having to, so that sort of thing was, he was like, I was like, yeah, give me a extra sour cream on that or whatever. Yeah, let's do it.
And as like a stark comparison, if we're talking about our central leads here, over to Catherine, Catherine Hahn does not have the sort of like transformative prosthetics.
No, you look like Catherine Hahn. Yeah,
look like Catherine Hahn, but her performance. Yeah. I mean, oh man, the layers of like emotion she has on herself throughout this show.
She's almost never being sincere, right? Like there's always some machination underneath whatever she's presenting herself as.
And like, you never know if something that's slipping through is genuine or a performance. And
that's the thing that makes her, I mean, it actually makes weird. This is weird because but it actually makes Agatha harder to root for than Oz in a weird way. Because Oz is fairly sincere, even if he's ignoring a lot, but like at least in terms of his goals, are pretty clear. And we're always in on the manipulation.
Up to a point,
When he's lying to Maroney, when he's lying to Falco, the tougher stuff is down the stretch when he's lying to his mom, right?
And Vic,
that's the tougher stuff. But for a lot of the mob stuff, I am watching it going like, oh, he's manipulating. Oh, look at this move he's making as a mob boss, right? Like because they're both schemers by nature. Agatha and Oz are both people who are surviving where they shouldn't be and are going up against people more powerful than them in any number of ways, but because they're just clever and crafty and good on their feet, they're able to get out of these situations.
The whole last episode of Agatha that sort of recontextualizes the whole show in so far as like she knew the Witch's Road was bullshit the whole time.
Yeah.
Recontextualizes everything she says as soon as we get through the doors into the road.
Yeah.
And like you realize the sheer depth of artifice that comes with that character and how much Catherine Hahn is playing certain lines that you read as like kind of sarcastic and snarky as her like poking the bear that is Billy Maximoff the whole time.
She does, because she's sort of, she's faking through knowing what all this stuff is to a certain extent. She's kind of rolling with it, but yes, also trying to go, what's the edge of this thing?
Mm-hmm. To the point where
literally she tears open reality.
Oh man, okay. Not to get too deep into the weeds in terms of like, because if we're talking about every single character actor in both of these shows, we'll be here all day. Because I think the cast of these shows are stacked.
Yeah, they're both incredible ensembles full of like people who you're like, yes, give these people great material.
Like Patti LuPone in frickin' Agatha is just absolutely killing it the whole show.
Look, you're never going to hear a bad word out of maybe our greatest living Broadway actor. I mean, my God, but she's incredible.
But Aubrey Plaza,
yeah. Another actor who had a lot to juggle, right? Because basically playing different characters while being one character.
Right. And when she literally reveals the artifice of the world by slashing through the backdrop.
Yeah.
And like that is contextualized for what it is once we get the reveal that the road isn't a thing. So like after realizing that, when you see her slash through the backdrop, you realize, oh, this is literally a stage that is being erected around Billy.
Because I initially read that as like, oh, look at the power this character possesses, but it's like, oh no, actually, it's just that's not real.
Yeah, exactly.
And that she sees it for the bullshit it is, and then you realize like, oh, and then she always knew it for the bullshit it was.
Yeah,
and so did Agatha, but they're playing different games.
Yeah, obviously with Rio/Death, as we eventually learn, is there to claim somebody's life. She doesn't honestly care whom, but both of them need to die.
She's owed a life, right? I mean, she's owed a soul or whatever. It's just like, and she's just keeping the books balanced.
That's just such a classic, like, magic-y fantasy thing of, like, death is owed, and you need to pay the piper at some point.
I'm sure you saw the litany of angry Marvel fans who were like, you do this after Thanos! Now you bring in death! Bullshit, you fucked up, Feige.
Okay, so, for context, for those who may not know, in the comics, Thanos, his whole thing about killing half the universe is just so he can impress the physical manifestation of death herself. And
he's in love with literally death. Not the concept of death, like death, the manifestation of death.
Which, in the Marvel comics specifically, usually manifests as female.
Yeah.
The idea that death has a gender is baffling.
I mean, it also does in Sandman.
Right.
Death is also a woman in Sandman.
True. But the Endless are their own can of worms that...
well, yeah, I mean, you get into... Because, I mean, there's a whole thing. But it's like, both are sort of the attempts to veer away from the classic Grim Reaper, I think, right?
Right. Well, and there's this also, like, matronly aspect of, like, it is a woman who will shepherd you into the world, and it is a woman that will shepherd you out. Kind of...
Yeah, I mean...
poetic symmetry to it.
Yeah, in want to... I don't need to bring up anything around him, but Gaiman talked about the idea of, like, well, who would I want shepherd me as, like, a kind woman, to just sort of gently hold your hand.
I prefer the cackling madness that is Aubrey Plaza's performance, but that's just me, maybe.
That's a whole thing, yeah. I mean, look, this is her second Marvel villain.
Oh yeah, that's true. Because
Legion. People forget about Legion. Legion ruled.
Legion does rule, and
Yeah.
there were definitely people online who was just like, oh, what if she's also the Shadow King? But that was never going to happen.
No, that's Jesus, people. Sometimes the internet.
Go watch Legion. She's also great in Legion.
Legion's great. She's always great. I mean, she's just, both. I mean, the big thing about this is, you just tee up anything for her or Catherine Hahn. And I mean, the beginning of Agatha, where they're doing very much a parody of a show I would watch, like a Nordic noir,
Yeah.
a grim, cold set snow crime show.
Everything is blue, and the character is humming to themselves alone at the start of a long road down the woods.
Yeah. With like her coming in and that, and them both perfectly playing the tone of something like Mayor of Easttown,
Right.
Is great. And like, that's the thing, is just they're both, and they were, it's an interesting thing. I saw Han talking about this, that they were both on Parks and Rec, but they were never actually in Parks and Rec together. So they never actually worked together. Yeah. Even though it's like, oh, weren't you both on this very successful show? It's like, never in the same moment, though, so we've never actually worked together. They know each other through press events for Parks and Rec and stuff, but...
Sure.
Yeah. It was also very nice. I saw Amy Poehler and Adam Scott at the premiere of Agatha with them.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
We talk about the second dark-headed or dark-haired lead of the show with Kristen Milioti in The Penguin.
Milioti.
Milioti, sorry.
She's just, I mean, she's the one all the critics seized upon, of course, because it was like, we'd already gotten a taste, of course, as we talk about the Penguin in Matt Reeves as the Batman. But she just, I mean, talk about knowing that you've got good material and just putting everything into it, because she is just electric in this show.
Yeah, she's, of course, playing Sofia Falcone, eventually Sofia Gigante.
AKA the Hangman, though maybe not legitimately so.
More like definitely not legitimately so.
I mean, God, her whole arc and retroactive arc, the Arkham flashback episode is just astounding.
Well, and she carries the whole episode, right? Like, that's the one episode that Colin Farrell isn't in.
I don't. Yeah, not more than a scene if he is at all. Is he not?
Barely
in
at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And you realize, when you get Oz's backstory and you realize, like, oh, this kid's a sociopath. She wasn't. She was made into a monster.
Yeah.
But then also, by the end of it, it's her all the horrible things she does. But by the end of it, she's not the Hangman, and she's not a Falcone, or she's not built for this.
Yeah.
Not like him.
Well, she has this moment in the second to last episode where she says, even like, I'm still playing by his rules. Even though I'm trying to burn down everything my father built, I'm still playing in the system he built. And that is still his hand around my neck.
She's not a gangster.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, oh my God. And I also talk about character actors. Of course, I'm sad that John Turturro didn't come back for this, but Mark Strong, his scenes as Carmine Falcone are fantastic.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, just get another great character actor in there, and
I mean, again, both of these casts are just freaking stacked.
Well, I mean, look, I could go on and on and on about Clancy Brown and his entire career, and just anytime they give that guy good stuff to do, and the power he has as Maroni, but also the vulnerability he's able to play. I mean, what a gift to, once again, a guy who certainly is known, but I don't think gets the respect he deserves, because he is just one of the best.
He's always going to be one of those guys that like shows up and you go, oh yeah, Clancy Brown. And like, obviously to me, he'll always be Mr. Krabs, but he...
And he'll always be the Kurgan to me from Highland. Or Lex Luthor, also one of the greatest Lex Luthors.
This is also true.
Animated series.
He will always deliver, is the point.
Yep. Yes. And in a way, though, that doesn't stand out to get like awards attention. He's a utility player. And these guys, unfortunately, get taken for granted, I think. We're just like, well, yeah, no, Clancy Brown's good, obviously. And you're like, well, wait a minute. But he's amazing in this.
Yeah.
But
Theo Rossi also doing good in his. He was in what Marvel TV show was he in? Luke Cage, right?
Yeah. Oh, he's so good in this. And by the way, you don't think he's gonna be, because the theories about he's gonna be the Scarecrow. Oh, he's gonna
be. If he was Scarecrow, why not just name him Dr. Crane?
I think that's the point I would go to. That is, he's Dr. Rush in this, or some people talk about we're gonna find out his real name is Hugo Strange. And you're like, no, I don't see Reeves' universe pulling that.
I mean, look, I think you could have pretty easily like named him Hugo Strange in this, and when he does all the weird hypnosis stuff, everyone would have been like, okay, yeah, cool, got it.
I mean, the hypnosis stuff, they could have called him Jervis Tetch too, if they really wanted to.
Sure,
but
yeah.
But I also like the idea that it's like, maybe there are other unethical doctors at Arkham that we don't know. They could have called him Jeremiah Arkham, if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's any numbers, but it's just like, no, I think he's just a weird psychologist. Like, this show is not, aside from one name drop of Selena Kyle that I did go when they mentioned it at the end, because I do think the end of Sophia's story is so dark and so that the worst fate is he doesn't kill her. He puts her back in Arkham.
When the Penguin tells Sophia that like you're going to hell, he doesn't mean he's gonna kill her. He's sending her back to her nightmare.
God, that was so good.
Yeah, no, it was really good.
Yeah.
I want to dig into the Selena Kyle of it all for a second.
Yeah.
Because obviously you and I are big proponents of when an adaptation happens, it is more important to us that they capture sort of the spirit of the thing than the one-to-one details of that.
Which I think was a lot of the argument I was having about this show with Joe Brandon Jones.
But the Penguin is like weirdly a sideways adaptation of a lot of stuff from Long Halloween and Dark Victory, right?
Which is, I mean, because that was Reeves' whole starting point for the Batman, right? Is that those are his bellwether,
And as far as Batman stories goes that you could pick to be your North Star, you could do worse.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on the records. I think Long Halloween is my favorite Batman story. Just singular Batman story. Long Halloween is pretty perfect.
It definitely cracks into the top 5 for me. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm more of a fan of Dark Victory personally because I like the Batman-Robin dynamic a little bit more, but that's just me.
I mean, both, it's hard to untangle those from one another, too, or even Catwoman when in Rome in there, too, which, by the way, is still my pitch for what they should do for another. If they want another show set in the Reeves universe, I would love to see a version of Catwoman when in Rome.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Catwoman when in Rome, there's this whole like subplot in Long Halloween, Dark Victory, the two Batman stories, where Catwoman is like slowly figuring out and basically confirms it by the end of those two books that Carmine Falcone was her dad. And there's,
which is kind of a little bit what I'm picturing her when she sends the letter to Sophia. I'm a little bit picturing her in Rome.
Yeah, and there's this whole like other story called Catwoman When in Rome that takes place kind of in between the pages of.
Yeah, basically like she disappears for a section of those stories, and then they did this thing about like here's what Catwoman was doing during this sort of middle ground between Long Halloween and Dark Victory.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and again, we get a lot of the resolution of that particular story in The Batman, which was also remixing that story to an extent.
Well, an interesting thing about this show that Matt Reeves talked about, because I don't know if you did, you probably did. I watched all the things at the end of each episode on Mac. No. They do an inside the episode, so I watched the little like 10-minute behind the scenes featurettes at the end of each episode. So they talked to Matt Reeves and Lauren LaFranc and the directors and Colin Farrell and Milioti and all the actors and stuff. It's really good. I love them as a nerd.
I love a good little mini doc.
Yeah, and that's something HBO does for all their shows, which I really appreciate. That if you stay through all the credits, which I will say though, Max tries to get you to go away, which I don't like. I have to know to like, no, go back to the episode, get away from trying to play something next because there's like a 10-minute featurette. But something Reeves talked about was this was not part of his plan. When they asked him if he wanted to do a show, he had to shuffle off a lot of what would have been Oz's story in the beginning of Batman Part 2 into this. So he talks about, like, some of this is expansion on things he was going to explore in the Batman Part 2, but will now instead find Oz further along in his story coming out of this, obviously. So, but some of these ideas, and that's where it's sort of like, while Lauren LaFranc is the creator and showrunner of this, still a lot of the credit goes to Reeves, because at least in broad strokes, this was where he was always going to take the character. But I think the Sophia Falcone stuff is all Lauren LaFranc.
Interesting. Well, and she feels like a character who might not play that big of a role in
I think that's
the Batman story.
One of the big things people are curious about is whether or not she's going to be in that movie, and they really haven't.
And that's like kind of the looming specter
about what the movie is about it anyway.
The looming specter over the Penguin is the fact that the Batman isn't in it, right?
And they said that from the start, and yet still every single person I ever saw talking about this is like, where's Batman?
Well, because you have a show set in the Batman universe and you never deliver a Batman. Even a show like Gotham eventually got to Batman.
Well, but come on. The Last Shot was so good. There's no... I can't remember exactly... Doesn't he say something? It's like, nobody's going to stop me now. Bat signal hits the sky.
Yeah.
And you're like, yes!
Yeah. No, that was a good little moment for the fans.
For him.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people going, I can't wait to see Batman punch the shit out of this guy. Mainly for a real late in the game decision. I think most people were on board with Oz right up until he kills Vic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, he killed Vic. I've seen a lot of people go, you know what you don't see? What might be is that Vic is actually alive. I've seen a lot of people go, and then Vic will become the... No, he drowned him, man.
Yeah.
And if he didn't, then that I call bullshit, right? Like, and I don't think, once again, I don't think Reeves is that kind of filmmaker.
We watch the ID float and sink into the water like that's the metaphor, man.
That's all you see. All you see is just the ID, you know.
But that's visual
maybe
filmmaking.
Batman swooped in. I have seen people like go, maybe Batman swooped in at the last one. No, you guys, this is the kind of story we're telling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a heartbreaking moment in the show, of course.
No. Renzi Feliz, who plays Vic, does a fantastic job in this show. Another Marvel show this guy was in was Runaways. I thought he did a fantastic job over there playing Alex Wilder.
Absolutely. Runaways suffered from being a Marvel Television, not Marvel Studios show. We've talked about that. That it was always having to skirt the MCU, and that kind of, I think, hurt it. Yeah. But I did think, actually, pretty much everyone on the cast did a great job in that.
Totally. And, I'm forgetting the actress's name, but who played Nico in that show has basically voiced her in everything since then, too. So,
and that's great. I mean, that talk about a thing where they did nail that. Lyrica Okano.
Yes.
And she did she's fantastic. Yeah, I see that. So she did it in Midnight Suns. That's great. Because that was just one of those things that was hurt when things were separated. Because I thought the first season was really strong, and then it kind of petered out.
I think the third season was like picked it back up personally because it gets into like weirder magic stuff.
I think it was kind of dead in the water, and so sometimes when those are, I just don't even get involved by the time they're.
That's fair.
Yeah, because it's just like they're not gonna. But anyway. Yeah, the whole arc through this, but then the heartbreaking but inevitable killing of him.
Yeah, well, especially once you realize what Oz sort of did to his mom and the like retroactive, like, not charade, but like she's a prop in his story he's telling himself, right? And
yes.
I mean, we really get that hammered home when we get the last scene of her in the bed with like the tear rolling down her eye and just her in this stark empty bedroom, and she's just the thing he keeps in his attic to make himself feel good.
Well, yeah, and it's like Vic was the last connection he had to something that made him vulnerable, right?
Right.
And so it's like for me to be the king. And also the moment when he was in City Hall and he looked up at the mayor's office, I was like, oh, I love it. I
Setting
love
up
it.
Penguin for mayor. Yeah.
Yeah, even if they don't, do that expressly, the idea that in some part of this guy's brain, that's an aspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
the big thing I would say when you talk about getting to the heart of the character. I think this show nails that. Yes, he doesn't have trick umbrellas. Okay, move on. He does. Oh, but I'll get to it in a second. But the heart of the character to me is the gangster who thinks he should be something more.
Mm-hmm.
That's Oswald Cobblepot or Oz Cobb. That doesn't really throw me either. Whatever. Fine.
I like the overwrought name of Cobblepot personally. That's just me.
I mean, I do think that particularly really works when they were doing he was high society. It's like the Cobblepots are one of the founders of the family. I don't know. Apparently, that was a DC decision too, because they've been wanting to change that for years in the comics or something like that. I don't know. Whatever. These are all surface level things that once again, and I know, and once again, one of my best friends, of course, is a guy who gets very hung up on that.
The fact that he's not wearing a tuxedo the whole time is too
well,
much to take.
they did get him back because not only the fact that they justified the tuxedo into psychology.
Yeah.
Was brilliant. Watching the Fred Astaire movie, where Fred Astaire is also acting out, killing his own gang,
right?
And him just the once again that kid who plays, he just does a little eyebrow raise, that's what I want to be.
Yeah,
and then the incredibly fucked up nature of him in the tuxedo dancing with the prostitute that he's dressed up as his mom.
The fact. Well, and going back and picking back up on that, if you look back at the episodes she's in earlier, she's wearing the same dress, which then retroactively you realize is the dress
he
his
was
mom
always
wore.
happy to do that.
Yeah. And it's just oh god, that's the rug pull this show pulls is the
and actually, I was going to say that the mother fixation is a thing from a lot of the comics.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you talk about Gotham, obviously Oswald Cobblepot is one of the central characters of that show.
And I would say certainly one of the strongest things throughout that entire show is that performance and arc for sure.
Mm-hmm. And the whole mother relationship is a huge part of that show as well.
Yeah, it's baked into the character. Mr. Jones came around big time on this show, I will say. I think he still is acting it's not the comic, but,
Of course it's not, because it's not.
No, it's not, and it's not even the, I think it was Reeves' decision to not move into the DCU proper, from what I gather. He really fought to be let me just do my own thing.
I think that's wise, because this has the tone of this epic crime drama like you're talking about with your Sopranos or your Untouchables or your what have yous.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked a lot about 70s cop movies as well, like the films of Sidney Lumet and things like that.
Sure, and it's got some heat in there, and it's got...
Seven.
Yeah, Seven's in there. And it's really hard to have that play against the backdrop of a larger superhero society, right? It's why we always talk about there are two different Batmans even in the comics. There is the Batman in his solo book, and then there's the Batman in any wider DC property. And they're almost two different characters. They have a lot of the same trappings, but they have to function at different levels.
Definitely. And then so it makes sense then that what they're talking about for the DCEU proper is doing Damien and League of Assassins and getting into Ra's al Ghul Lazarus Pit stuff. Yeah, do globetrotting Batman who fights magical characters.
Totally.
Be the opposite. And I'm okay with both because I love both shades of Batman. Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it does seem less likely that Rob Pattinson Batman would meet a Superman. You could do it, but Reeves even talked about this. He said what you would have to do, though, is fundamentally make that holy shit, our world is different now because there's an alien here.
Yeah.
And you'd have to really play into that doesn't make any sense. But to just have a Batman, as we've talked about...
But that's what Snyder tried to do.
He did.
That was the attempt there.
Yeah. And once again, you can like or dislike that take, but that take makes sense of here's a guy who sees a threat. But I think it also makes sense what Gunn is doing, where it's just like, oh no, there's just a Batman who exists in a world where that just is.
Yeah, where superheroes are a long-standing bit of the world's history.
So that will be a Batman. That will be a different Batman.
Yeah.
I do think because of the praise both this show and the movie have gotten, I don't envy the people having to make that, because I feel like no matter what, they're going to be, oh, this is this Batman? Well, there's a guy over here making like world-class films.
But I think it's about capturing the different essences of
It absolutely
Batman.
is. Oh, no, I think we'll like it. I just, my worry will just be like, well, we like the serious Batman.
Yeah.
The real deal Batman, not this frivolous Batman. But
is why a character like Agatha is a little bit more free to do whatever they want, right? Because there's no expectation
because
there.
The opposite then is at Marvel, they're able to balance that all this stuff just exists. It's just a given. This is happening in the same world that we're getting this even though that movie has a Hulk in it, but what seems to be a very serious, conspiracy thriller movie in Brave New World. It's Marvel has found a way to make all these things make sense. That, like, when you're with Cap, you're in a Cap story. When you're with Doctor Strange, you're in a Doctor Strange story, Thor and such like that. That we can just, through these entrances into this, and obviously this was seeded by, I don't think you would have started here. This benefits from, you had to come in through Wanda and Vision into Agatha.
Right. But it's also unburdened by expectation of what is an Agatha All Along show.
Right.
Because no one knows. There's no precedent.
The cachet of people know, if you were to go, who are the Batman villains? The Penguin is in the 5 people could name. And they have an image, right?
Right. Yeah. They're either thinking Danny DeVito or they're thinking Meredith Burgess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. And so they're not necessarily, and I remember when they cast Colin Farrell, people were like, what? What does this take?
But when you say Salem 7, people go, I don't know.
And it's an interesting thing, right? Yeah, you're meeting these two. They have two different things. So I will actually say, I think, broadly speaking, all right. And I because I want to get I don't want to get comic book fans, but broadly speaking, the big DC characters are more iconic to the mass than the big Marvel characters, minus obviously like a Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man, Hulk, Wolverine, right?
For the most part, but I'm not sure even Hulk and Wolverine have the cachet of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. At least the core trinity of DC. You could go anywhere in the world and everybody knows the S, the Bat, and if you showed them Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
There we go. That's Wonder Woman. They may not know anything about her. Yeah, they may not know anything about her or be able to tell you any of the stories or anything, but they would go, that's who that is. Whereas, and then Hulk and Wolverine probably.
I mean, big green guy, purple pants, and Wolverine is hairy guy with claws.
But for sure, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. And some of that is just, they've got a few decades on them.
Sure. But there is this certain amount of freedom that Marvel has in that anonymity.
They on two levels. They have to make you aware of the characters. They have to teach you about the character. But the pro of that is you don't have the expectation come in going like, well, I've already seen 6 Batmans and my favorite is this one.
Right, yeah. There is no precedent for what a Scarlet Witch movie even looks like. We've had Scarlet Witch in movies up to this point, but her being the central protagonist of something is WandaVision, I guess. But even that is like a story that is stretched and distorted by her own trauma.
Well, and it's a two-hander, right, as well. But I think the other thing that I'm fascinated by is how people are glomming onto, and it's great to see these characters from the MCU. But then when something like Multiverse of Madness came out, there was certain subjects that's like, hey, that's not Wanda. That's not our Wanda. But I think to you and I were going like, oh no, that's very much a Wanda that we can recognize from the comics. It's an interesting. It's like, this is kind of where we always thought she was going to some extent, at least.
I understand that most of you have not read Avengers Disassembled, but it was sort of a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it exactly. It's an interesting thing where now so many people are familiar with the continuity established by these movies that they've become like us with the comics, but with the movies, right? Where it's just like, wait a minute, that doesn't read right to me based on my knowledge from these other 5 movies.
Recently, this bit of a tangent, but I think it plays into this idea of expectation. Recently, there was a Marvel tabletop RPG just released, and I was contemplating to myself, you know me, I love running tabletop RPG games. D&D chief among them. Yeah, I know. But like, if I was to run a story in like the Marvel universe, how would you even go about approaching that? How would you even, it was just thought experiment stuff. And what the conclusion I came to is just like, I basically have to ignore comic book continuity in favor of MCU continuity, because that is what is more widely like known and understood and easier to absorb all in one go.
Interesting thing, because like I go to most of the Marvel movies with my dad, who doesn't read comic books but likes the movies because they're big, fun action movies.
Yeah,
but he always inevitably asks me about blah blah blah. Is that how it is in the comics? Now I just have to be like, sort of, or like, or you'll say like, is this based on a comic? And you're like, it's actually taking like elements from like 7 comics, but then sort of like, but this one in reverse or something like that. Yeah. It's an interesting thing when it's like, I think a lot of people, I think one of the big things that they struggle with is, oh, well, obviously, if these movies are so popular, what a great advertisement for the comics. But I saw this working in a comic book shop, which I did for a while. They're not the same. They're close, but there is stuff where you're like, wait, what?
People wanting the thing, like people walk out of Infinity War or Endgame and they go to pick up the Infinity War comic, right?
Yeah.
Because that's obviously the obvious corporate synergy that they want.
That's the thing. And also it doesn't
help. But then
help
who's this weird glowing space Jesus guy?
Right. The other thing is they'll do is they'll slap that poster for Endgame on the Infinity War comic or whatever,
right? And
go like, there you go, read the comic. You're like, yeah, that's not the same thing, man. I had that a lot with when I was working there. It was specifically a lot of people were coming in for Civil War, and they'd be like, Civil War, want to read the comic? Ooh, okay, well, there's a lot of setup to it. The conflict is similar, but you'll recognize parts of it. But there's also a lot of characters who aren't in it, or characters who are very different.
Here's Bendis's Volume 1 of New Avengers Breakout. Start here, read 7 volumes. That will eventually get you to.
you and I, obviously being such lifelong devotees of it, we have the list, right? Of like, oh, you like this character, and what? Here's where you should start, right? That's I used to give people the Ultimates a lot if they like the Avengers, because I'm like, okay, that requires no context,
right? Or like I really like the season 1 books they did.
Those were great too. Yeah. I've been giving people the life story books. Have you read those?
Mm-hmm.
I think those are really good distillations of stuff, or the Grand Design ones as well.
Grand Design are pretty good.
If you want a shotgun continuity like its history, the Grand Design books are perfect for that.
Totally.
They're dense, but they'll get you up to speed.
What I really like about a show like Agatha, or I think Werewolf by Night is this a little bit as well, is Marvel is taking some swings at characters where you have no ability to do that in the comics. Not really. Not realistically. Right. Yeah. How do you approach the story of Agatha Harkness if people ask you, like, what should I read? And it's well, there's these volumes of Fantastic Four, and there's a couple of volumes of Avengers, and she's kind of a background character in all of it.
It's an interesting thing because they do this thing now. I don't know if you've seen these trades that are out there now. When when they have shows or movies, they'll do the saga of someone. Have you seen these? Mm-mm. Like I did buy that because it's a really nice collection. When WandaVision came out, they did the saga of Wanda and the Vision, and that was a nice collection of all their miniseries and like their wedding issue.
Sure.
And just sort of I was like, oh great, I just picked it up because I'm like, this is good because this would be like 3 trades I'd have to pick up otherwise. But I saw that they did just put out the saga of Agatha Harkness, and it is the biggest hodgepodge, like you're talking about, of like Fantastic Four 165, X-Men 72, whatever, and just like. Yeah, like you can do Vision and Scarlet Witch because there's a lot of long ongoing, there's a full 12-issue miniseries. There's this specific arc of these 6 issues of Avengers that you can pull. But yeah, Agatha, it's just like random appearances. People are going to pick that up and then be like, I can't follow this shit.
Or like even Werewolf by Night was kind of similar. And there is a book called Werewolf by Night, but then like how do you explain Man-Thing and like Elsa Bloodstone and
that's it exactly. Moon Knight was a similar thing where it's like, even though there have been Moon Knight comics, that character, as you know, continuity has changed and been so much retconning. And like, if you go read the original Moon Knight comics, you're like, what the hell? This guy isn't anything like he is in the show.
Or even go back to the Bendis stuff, which a lot of people were saying when the Moon Knight show was coming out to like start with the Bendis stuff. But that's him experiencing like Cap and Wolverine and Spider-Man in his head. And
it uses the multiple personality stuff, but in a radically different way. Or like, I'm a huge fan of the Lemire comic, but that's like he's in a mental institute. You're like, I don't know where to give you like, it is a big reason, and I still think, I can't believe they're leaving this money on the table, that there aren't comics set in the MCU continuity.
It has always struck me as strange. Yeah.
It just seems crazy to me because like, number one, we'd read them, but we'd read anything. They're not chasing us. We're already in. I bleed Marvel, like, out of this arm, and out of this arm it's DC. I'm really, I tell you, I was
you cut open my back, it's IDW.
I had my guts are just Image. It's all right.
My left foot's Dark Horse, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do? I'm actually getting that looked at. My doctor says it's time. But this Dark Horse foot has got to go. I was standing out of the mall near here, and I had a Superman hat on and a Venom shirt, and this guy just stops and goes, "What the hell, man? DC and Marvel?"
Hey, two great tastes that taste great together.
I know. I'm just like, it's crazy to me that that's still like, got to pick a side, man. I mean, it's the Star Wars, Star Trek thing, right? It's like, hey, man, my attitude has always been, and that's the case. Hey, if there's one thing to boil down for these shows, why limit yourself? Why cut yourself off from great stories?
Just because of arbitrary, corporate logos.
I just want good stories, man. Yeah. And whether that story involves Spider-Man or Superman, doesn't matter to me. In fact, I just got, and here's a plug for a thing that we have no connection to, but I'm just happy exists. I just got the omnibus, the DC versus Marvel omnibus, that they finally reprinted all the DC Marvel crossovers in a big hardcover omnibus.
Does that include the amalgam stuff?
There's a separate omnibus that's the amalgam stuff.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So they have the amalgam one and then the crossovers. So last night I was reading Superman versus Spider-Man, which is just it's so kooky.
Does that include the New Teen Titans X-Men stuff?
I think that's in there, yeah.
Oh, cool. That crossover is actually pretty good. It's got Darkseid has to track down the Phoenix Force or something. It's pretty good.
It does. I know for a fact it does have Darkseid versus Thanos.
Good.
That's in there. Batman meets Daredevil. Batman and Captain America's in there. Mm-hmm. Of course, Avengers versus Justice League.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's so nice that, because it's like, it's also nice to remember a time when like they were for a while literally across the street from each other, and the rivalry was more friendly. Now there's so much corporate bullshit and money involved. But one thing that both Gunn and Feige want you to know is Gunn and Feige like each other.
And hey, if Papa Feige and Daddy Gunn can get along, we're doing all right.
Yeah. My big concern, of course, always at DC has nothing to do with James Gunn or DC. It all has everything to do with Warner Brothers.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, as much as we rant and rave about these stuff, you talk about looking for good stories, a lot of this is overshadowed, and not to get too political in all of this, but these larger corporate entities that don't give a shit about good stories or art and are just looking to make a buck. I mean, the story that are just coming out right now about how Disney is pulling that episode of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur because it addresses trans issues, and like all of the stuff and bullshit with Zaslav and Warner Brothers like shelving stuff because they think it'll make them more money as a tax write-off. It's like these corporate oligarchs that are excuse me, as I get on my anti-capitalist screed, in control of these things, and like part of that is because they hold the purse strings, right? Like you can't make these things without money, but at the same time, having them strangle stories that would be important to people like in their infancy just feels like icky and gross, and I hate it. And
the thing about it is, it's always been that way, and it will always be that way. Unfortunately,
I hate it, John. Why can't it be different?
I mean, I think the thing is, we're just hyper aware of it because we're fans of this specific milieu. But obviously, film, at the end of the day, whatever creative impulse you have as a creator ultimately eventually finds its way up to people who just see money, because that's the way this gets made. And it's, art versus commerce, right? I am happy, at least on some level, that apparently the James Gunn DC films functions more like Marvel in that they are autonomous. I mean, they're still funded by Warner Brothers, but they don't need a green light from Warner Brothers,
which is not necessarily the case with Feige and Disney.
It is mostly the case with Feige and Disney.
Sure, but that's just because he hasn't made them an absolute belly flop yet.
Yeah, I mean, he's got, with all of this stuff, is the more success you get, the more rope they give you, right?
Yeah. And yeah, again, it's the art versus commerce argument, and it's the like,
and it's unfortunately the thing we like is also the most expensive thing, right? Which is
right. Yeah,
that's another problem too. Is that if these movies didn't cost $200 million, they'd probably be a little bit more hands off.
And if they could make them for less, they would look like something made by a random person with $1 million shot over a weekend so they can hold on to the rights of the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the
Corman.
Fantastic Four movie, yeah.
I do think, though, the Penguin is an interesting example of, look at how successful that has been, and that's fairly small scale for a, once again, superhero set show.
Quote unquote, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the comic book thing is, I hope both of these open the door to more things that take chances and do different stuff than what people would expect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously in very different directions. With the Penguin, you're hoping for, you can have these grounded shows set in superhero universes.
Aimed at adults. Also.
Aimed at adults that are serious dramas that can elicit these like, whoa, holy shit, this is good television. And obviously in the Agatha direction, it's the allowing a creative team to have this unique vision that they can bring to life using the resources of something like Marvel.
The big thing that I love to see both companies doing is just pushing those boundaries of like, what is a comic book show or movie or whatever, Well, I mean, when I gather, Lanterns is going to be something more akin to Penguin. It's, they've talked about it's going to have closer to the tone of True Detective.
I'm like, you and I have been saying this for our entire adult lives, and that's that comic books aren't a genre.
No, it's and nor are superheroes really, right? I mean, because if Matt Reeves' The Batman is supposedly the same genre as Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, that's pretty wild, So, and even like I said, even with Marvel, there are, the Captain America movies are more like political thrillers, and the Doctor Strange movies are crazy fantasies, and the Thor movies are, high fantasies, and the Guardians are cosmic comedies, and, it's like, there's even just at Marvel, there's all these things. Because, I think we're going to have a similar conversation come Daredevil Born Again. That looks pretty grounded, and from what I gather, is very intense and aimed at a mature audience.
But also exploiting this idea of a broader Marvel universe that, like, something like the Penguin won't, but also you can capitalize on the fact that characters like the Punisher and Bullseye and Echo are all kind of sharing the same space. And we talked earlier about the Penguin, like, glancing up the mayor's office. We're literally getting Mayor Kingpin's show. And
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
I can't wait. This city needs me. Weird. We've seen very little, but anytime just seeing the two of them in that diner booth, it's everything to me, right?
Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox. Yeah.
Yeah, is it? You've come up in the world. What does your darker half think? And they're doing mute. I mean, talking about a guy, literally a homicidal artist, a murderous Banksy is going to be the main villain on Daredevil. So, I mean, if anything, it's going to go harder than the Netflix show.
We'll see. I mean, look, season 3 went pretty hard.
Yeah. But my boy Frank Castle's back to fuck some people up. So,
well, I don't know what it says about the world that, like, Frank Castle being in a thing makes me both excited and depressed, because I just know it's going to be just another wave of people co-opting the Skull for shitty reasons, especially in today's, like, political environment.
Can't prevent that, sadly. It's a bummer that people misunderstand that character horribly.
Yeah, like the other day I saw a bumper sticker that was like the skull painted like the American flag, and one of the teeth was like the blue stripe of like supporting police officers. Like, that is so confusing for so many reasons that you will not understand.
I will say, no, this is not even that political a statement, really. I don't understand the police embracing of it.
Well,
like, just because it's not, and the idea I always have to go back to is they're not really reading the comics, but it's like, this is a guy who's inherently about, when the system failed him, he became a nihilist, basically.
Right.
Like,
but it's the scary idea of law enforcement officers dreaming that they could be the Punisher and using their authority to kill people. Like, it's scary stuff when you really think about it.
The Matthew Rosenberg run of Punisher that I highly recommend has that moment where he sees the cop with the skull on the car, and he's like, "No, you need to be better than me."
Yeah, and
because that's another thing too, is constantly in the comics, obviously, is he's like, "I do not endorse this as a way of life. No one else should be doing this."
Yeah, and
yeah,
I'll be very curious to see how that show treats the Punisher, because a lot has happened in the world since the last time we saw Frank Castle on the screen.
I mean, it's the Daredevil show, right? I mean, it's the most interesting Punisher stuff is always the two of them in, morality arguments.
Totally.
That being said, I do love that character. I love both of those characters a lot, so I can't wait. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, is there's so much good stuff coming from both companies, because the little sizzle reel for Marvel Television certainly has me very excited.
Totally.
And talk about radically different. Look at next year's slate between Ironheart, Daredevil, Wonder Man, which, I mean, from what I gather, Wonder Man is basically a sitcom. Like,
and Wonder Man is another one of those shows where I look at and say, like, so are we just doing extended Scarlet Witch stuff? Because, like, obviously I don't think this show's going to have anything to do with Scarlet Witch, but, like, that's a whole thing in the comics, is Wonder Man's relationship with Scarlet Witch and how, like, his personality was used to create the Vision and stuff. Like, I like, obviously you can't retroactively, it'd be a big twist. Not twist, it would be a stretch if they said, like, oh yeah, Ultron used Wonder Man's personality.
This is a big thing for me, is, like, the idea that there are people out there, and I get it, look, when I said this isn't our DNA, but, like, Marvel shouldn't be bending over backwards to make these things the comics, because those exist.
Yeah,
that would actually not be that fun for me. I feel like if we just went to the Civil War movie and it was a blow by blow exact, it'd just be like, all right.
I do want to see Hercules beat the shit out of a robot Thor, though.
I mean, that might still happen.
I hope so.
We've got a Hercules in the universe now. So
is maybe my favorite moment from the Civil War comic that was never going to happen in the movie.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of stuff. I mean, once again, you're starting from a place of it's just not the same world.
Yeah,
and that's true. And hey, that's okay.
And that's perfectly okay. Yeah.
And
speaking of not the same world,
wear a monocle, have a quick umbrella.
I don't want to walk away from this conversation without talking about Joe Locke a little bit.
Oh, sure, yeah. Wiccan.
He's such a strong piece of Agatha all along, and we haven't talked about him at all.
Well, I mean, we should talk about him, because, like we said, if we get too far into these things, but definitely he's so massively important to it. And in some ways, it's almost like a backdoor if Agatha gives us nothing but Wiccan into the universe, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, and like how this show ends with him and Ghost Agatha like going off on another adventure.
Ghost Agatha's pretty great. Talk about getting things closer back to the comics.
And that's the thing, like having to explain to people like, well, in the comics she was a ghost for a long time.
It's so interesting. My sister's like a pretty big comics fan, but like Scarlet Witch is her jam. So it's been really fun to talk to her about this. And she's like, oh my God, they're doing the Witches Row. Oh my God, they're doing the Salem 7. And then to have her be like, Ghost Agatha, just like, oh, nice. Yeah, because it's rare that usually she's more after the fact, like, oh, I like that character in the movie. I'll check him out in the comics. Mm-hmm. But to have her suddenly be like, yeah, because that's this section of the Marvel Universe is her obsession. So
totally. And all the Young Avengers stuff that we're like slowly creeping into.
Yeah, I mean they've just been slow rolling that, which I think is great. I think we're just keep adding new members. Obviously, the Marvels had the closest to, it seems like, Kamala is actually building the Young Avengers and or Champions, whatever they're going to call it. But that's great. Yeah, because now I'm like, comic book fans are so greedy. I'm like, yay, Wiccan. Where's Hulkling? And where's your brother? I mean, obviously that whatever Wiccan's next story is will involve finding Speed, right?
Right. Tommy, who is like the ghost twin that is Billy.
That reminds me. Did not expect the return of Ralph Bohner. Was delighted by the return of Ralph Bohner.
You had best believe I went to Etsy almost immediately after the episode to try to find a Bohner family reunion pitch a tent t-shirt.
Yeah. Did you find one?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. They were there before the episode was done airing.
Yeah, I think Disney actually just officially makes them now.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, Ralph Bohner, the metatextual joke here of Ralph Bohner being their Deep Throat is there are too many layers to that joke. I just cannot.
Well, right from the start of using Evan Peters, right, is already a meta joke.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's an actor I like a lot because you talk about a guy who just leans in. That's a guy who I've never seen him phone it in on anything. Every performance is to the max. And he's so fucking weird, but clearly having the best time.
Yeah, the whole Wiccan episode near the end of this series where we like get to see Wanda's ghost kid take over the corpse of a kid that dies in a car crash, and like they really do a good job of getting across the like big points of Wiccan's backstory, but also like smooth it over in a way that the MCU has always been good at doing, right?
Yes. I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, in some ways I get why people are more drawn to the MCU, right? Versions and stuff. Because they are not simplified in a negative way, but they're free of all the bullshit that we know, where it's like, because they have the opportunity to look at everything and go, these are the 6 things that work about this character. Whereas we know, there's years of them going like, we don't really know what this guy's deal is, and we're going to try that, and that didn't work. Forget that,
So Scarlet Witch made a deal with a guy who was sort of acting as a representative for Mephisto, and they gave them the souls to create the kids, and that, yada, 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 yada.
I mean, I love that comics are weird, but also there's a part of me that is just like, God, isn't it nice when it's just been cleaned up and polished, and it's like, here's the... I always talk about these. In a lot of ways, these are the platonic ideals of the characters. They really are the characters boiled down to their strongest essence and freed of a lot of the... I'm very curious to see once they start doing the X-Men, because there is no comic that has more convoluted, nonsense in it. I mean, the X-Men is just a constant mindfuck. Like, it's just...
The minute you introduce a Scott Summers and a Jean Grey on the screen together, suddenly a whole universe of bullshit pops up.
And I will say, it's kind of why I defend some of those later Fox movies. Because I'm like, I don't know, man. These feel like the messiness of the comics in a lot of ways.
Right.
But it's So I do think that I thought they did a great job. That episode is great, and it also indicates why the strengths of doing something as a show, right? Is as a show you can take an hour and go, oh yeah, here's everything that's up with Wiccan.
You're right, and we get the context of like how he is sort of an amalgamation. Speaking of amalgamations, between the soul, quote unquote, of Billy Maximoff and Billy Kaplan, kind of creates this new gestalt.
Because you think about that, Billy was like 10? so it's a little kid and a teenager.
But 10 after 2 days of existing.
Yeah, I know. So it's like how much, when you talk, it would have to be a lot of Kaplan, right? Because Billy Maximoff just barely was a thing.
Right, and that's true from the comics as well, which is why I was so impressed with this adaptation of it, where it's just like, oh, they simplified it, they made it easy to understand, and it just is an accepted truth going forward.
My biggest surprise was I was like, wow, they're really pretty much doing it. Like, I gotta say, I'm surprised how much they leaned into how weird that character's backstory is, but in a way that, is totally approachable. And I think I was talking about the success of Penguin, but from what I've seen, the viewership on Agatha has been great as well, because I think they've managed, one of the things Marvel is very good at doing, like you're talking about, is finding a way to present these things in a way where they're not off-putting or like, what the hell is this bullshit?
Which Agatha has its fair share of what the hell is this bullshit, but the show's doing it on purpose, right?
Yes, you feel like you're in good hands of people going like, okay, this is going somewhere. It's not just like, what? That's a bunch of gleep clop.
Yeah, it's weird magic nonsense, and you're along for the ride. And by the time you realize what the ride actually is, you're going, oh, okay, cool, good on you, Joe.
It's a very satisfying watch. Like, by the end of it, when everything is revealed, you're like, oh, wow. Wow, this is what you were doing the whole time.
And I think it does improve upon WandaVision, that does a similar thing, but that show sort of devolves into almost generic superhero fight by the end. Obviously, you have like the apex of the two visions having a logic off is just pure comic book goodness.
that's as good as it gets right there. I need more of that kind of tone in the Vision show.
But it is sort of a beam struggle, right? Like, and that's a constant complaint for superhero genre stuff, if you want to call it that.
There's a little bit of that in Agatha. You do get a throwdown with death a little bit.
But it's in the second to the last episode, and suddenly you're like, hold on, if that was the big beam struggle, then what's the last episode? And that's when we get the third rug pulled out from underneath us.
Yeah.
Man, I liked Agatha all along. I really liked the Penguin too, but Agatha was just such my jam.
I would reverse that exact opinion.
Yeah, I know.
I really like Agatha, but the Penguin is such my jam.
Yeah.
But both are really good, and like I said, both are indicative of the kinds of things that if you let people have some creative runway, what you can do with this material.
I really hope we see the vast majority of these. Obviously, some of the cast members in both shows died in the show, so we're not going to be seeing some of them back. The fact that most of the cast of Agatha gets axed by the end of the show is pretty surprising.
The only one who makes it out is Shasir Zamata's character, right?
Jennifer Kale, who's like a kind of a third stringer in the comics. She's a big deal in certain characters' runs. She shows up here and there.
It's one of those characters where I know of her, but
she's just like a secondary magic character who shows up in Doctor Strange books, and she's all over the place.
That would be where I would have seen her. I read my Doctor Strange on the regular, like I said, I think both are Penguin obviously offed a lot of people.
Who walks away from Penguin? Is it just Penguin and Sophia Falcone? I guess Dr. Rush survives.
Dr. Rush does survive because he's back at Arkham, which is
right. That was weird. But everyone else is dead.
Aside from some of the the Yakuza guy that.
Sure, like the second stringer team that he has,
of its core main regulars.
Yeah.
When she just shoots Michael Kelly at the table.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
Yeah. That, or my favorite moment, of course, is her walking through the house having gassed everybody, and you're just like, oh, fuck. That moment is such a great like supervillain, like, oh shit, Jesus Christ, that is dark. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that was the moment in the show where I was like, oh, Sophia ain't fucking around. All right, cool.
no. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
There's
all in all,
your
both
villain show.
great shows.
Yeah, I like it, and both very good just for the concept of whatever comic book media is.
Going forward, I doubt we'll have the same like back-to-back good comic book shows running at the same time. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, no, it's hey, man. That I mean, that's the thing, and I do agree with Feige has talked about this. DC's success is Marvel's success. Marvel's success is DC's success. Rising tide lifts all boats, sort of thing. I mean, I think the most interesting thing we'll see is next year, when in the same month we're getting Superman and Fantastic Four.
both things that have sort of an aspirational like air to them if done correctly. Both of them have this kind of like pop science vibe.
I imagine we'll do an episode combining those two probably.
We'll see. That might be too much show to handle. I don't know.
As Brendan Jones says, you can take your Barbenheimer. I want my super fantastic.
Ah, very good, very good.
So there you go. Next month on the show, I don't know what we're doing. We've talked about these. There may be some off months for panel up if we don't have anything. So just going forward, we'll let you know if we don't. We're going to try to do this monthly is the attitude. But there may be more things like this too, where we combine things if we see them together. I know Skeleton Crew premieres next month, but I think that'll actually be our January episode.
If we aren't doing an episode on Kraven the Hunter, I will be very happy.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing Kraven. Maybe
now, if we don't do Sonic the Hedgehog 3, I might be upset.
That might be a Ghost of the Moon. Who knows? We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to see Sonic, so it doesn't really matter.
Sure, yeah.
Because I really enjoy those Sonic movies. And you know what I liked? I liked that Knuckles show.
Knuckles show was fun. It was all right.
I thought it was all right. I mean, all of those are cute. They don't overstay their welcome. All right, but of course, if you want to hear more from us, you can head over to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/punchupent. That's punchupent. There you get cool exclusive bonus content as well as help out all the shows on the network. And Gorgoni, where else can people check us out?
Right here. You're already there. It's YouTube. I mean, some of you might already be there. But anyway, youtube.com/@punchupentertainment. You can see our beautiful faces while we talk about some stuff. And most of the time, on May the Panel Be With You, you can see the comic book that we're reading at the same time. We're reading Star Wars comics over there. I think as of the release of this, we're hip deep in Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, we're entering the last leg of Shadows of the Empire. That's been that's one of those comics that's 6 issues, but it feels like it's 40.
Well, because every issue I also have to explain how it ties into the novel and the video game and the
multimedia experiment that was Shadows of the Empire.
Right. It's a whole journey that we're going on together. And come join us. And while you're there, please like, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications every time a thing comes out. Let us know in the comments below. Agatha, Penguin, thoughts, opinions, like, dislike? What are we thinking, people? Come on.
Yeah. Are you still Team Ozcob?
I'm on shaky ground, as you say.
Yeah. No, that's fair. This is my final statement on that. I want him to take over the city only so that Batman can fight him.
That's fair.
I root for him only as much as I want him in a position to fight Batman.
And I always want Agatha to be the devil on some far nobler character's shoulder.
Oh yeah, no, she's exactly where she should be, which is as a weird ghost lady. All right, well we'll see you next month then. But until then, I'm John Campbell,
and I will always be Mike Gorgoni.
We're gonna panel down.